Tracy Dolan, a local comedian who regularly performs at Vermont Comedy Club. She performs with national touring comics like Hari Kondolabu, Gary Gulman, and Cameron Esposito, along with Saturday Night Live alums Tim Meadows and Jim Brewer. Yeah! She's been featured in the New York's She-Devil Comedy Festival and the Boston's Women in Comedy Festival. Give it up for Tracy Dolan.
I told them I just wanted to do jokes, but they said I have to tell a healthcare story, so we're mixing it up. So I just wanted to tell you a little bit about myself. I grew up in a trailer park. Anybody? Woo! All right, a little fancy at Spruce Lodge tonight. I get it. That's okay. And I'm not trying to stand up here and be all like, oh, I'm better than you because I grew up in a home that can move, you know. Parents made different choices. Like your parents decided to buy a home with a foundation, which is fine, Joe. That's fine. My parents decided to buy a home that could, in a light breeze, magically rise into the air, spin around, and turn into a meth lab. It's just different, you know. I spent most of my childhood in the trailer park. I eventually, after high school, left. I went to college. Thank you. I eventually came back home about 12 years after I left because my dad got sick, and I came home to take care of him. Also, I was the only one without a really good job, which made it easy. And so I came home, and the way I found out about my dad getting sick, he wrote me a letter, and he never used to write to me, and he wrote to me, and he told me that he had been having trouble when he was passing his water, and then, you know, he found out he had terminal cancer, and he said that he had been feeling bad for a couple of years, but he thought he just had a cold in his bladder. Could we stop that? You know, both my parents were big on colds in different parts of your body. Enough already. I remember being like 9 years old and sitting on the sidewalk playing, and my mother's like, honey, get up, you're gonna get a cold right up through you. Like somehow it was gonna go up my vagina, and then I'm just gonna be full of cold. So that, if you ever hear your parents, like, make it stop, because it can be very dangerous later in life if they continue to believe that shit. So I went home to take care of my dad. He had been in the hospital for a few weeks, and then we decided that it was best if he was at home, which might be a romantic gesture on all of our parts. I don't know that it's better, you guys. Just saying, something to think about. But he did decide to come home, and my mother told me that they had a male nurse coming in. This was the late 90s, so we still called them male nurses. I think they're just called nurses now. It was like the female special prosecutor during Brett Kavanaugh. Like, she's just a prosecutor, you know? She's just a prosecutor. So I asked my mom to tell me about this male nurse, and she said his name is Daniel, and he's Filipino. And I said, you mean Filipino? And she said it bothered her because she thinks that when you talk about someone's race or ethnicity and you say it in a regular voice, you're racist. Even, you know, no matter what she said about him, she said his name's Daniel, he's Filipino, and he's got the most beautiful voice. And I said, Mom, I think when you compliment someone, you can just say that in a regular voice. I don't think Daniel will mind. And she told me to shut up, and I did. Because when your husband's dying, you get a lot of latitude. You know, you can tell your kids whatever you want, and we can't say anything back. So I came home to take care of Dad, and the day that he passed away, so Daniel was in there holding my mom's hand, which she found very comforting. And he passed, and it was my job to call the funeral home. So I walk out of the master bedroom, and I go into the next room to pick up the phone. And yes, in case you're wondering, sometimes trailers have master bedrooms, okay? Check your privilege. I mean, double wides do. I don't know what happens in single wides. We weren't allowed to visit the single wide trailers, because that's where murder happens. So I go in to call the funeral home, and as I'm dialing, I realize I actually don't know how this is going to go. You don't ever call a funeral home until the moment, right? And I thought, I don't know how to do this part. But I thought, it's a small town, and there's one funeral home, Ferguson's Funeral Home. I'm sure they're going to just help me through it, right? People must call all the time awkwardly, and then they figure it out. So I'm on the line, and the phone's ringing, and it picks up at the other end, and this guy says, "Hello?" Which I was a little surprised by. I thought he would say, "Hello, Ferguson's Funeral Home." So I thought maybe I dialed the wrong number. And I said, "Is this Ferguson's Funeral Home?" And he said, "Yep." And I thought, okay, this guy's going to be a bit of a bitch. So I said, well, my dad died, and I'm just waiting for him to swoop in. Just spoiler alert, he never swoops in. So I said, my dad died, and I was wondering if you could come and get him. And then he kind of mumbled, "Up or down?" Which sounded like up or down, but that doesn't even make sense, right? So I thought, I'm just going to repeat it. And I said, my dad died. Could you pick him up? And then he said more clearly this time, "Up or down?" And I'm like, oh, shit, I don't know what that means. But so I look in at my dad, and I'm like, well, he's lying down. He's up on a bed, though, but he's down. He's definitely down. He's dead. So he's down. And then the funeral home director, let's just call him Mr. Ferguson, he gives me one of these. An exasperated sigh. I've ruined his day. Sorry, calling about my dead dad and everything. I've ruined his day. My mother is in there. She's beginning to ululate, almost like in a Zimbabwean style. We're not even a little bit African. I got my 4 brothers sitting outside who are all at different stages of substance use disorder. And they have not been out all day to get a fix. So they are jonesing, And the priest is there. I don't know how many of you grow up in a Catholic family, but when the priest comes over, Catholic. When the priest comes over, it's a big deal, So he's up there. He's praying over my dad's body. He's been praying a while. At this point, it feels like he's run out of prayers, and he's just shooting from the hip, He's ad-libbing prayers. My sister leans over. She's like, I think he's just making stuff up now. And I've ruined this guy's day, So he's like, and then he says, "Upstairs or downstairs?" Really? I was supposed to get that? Sorry, I didn't understand your code, you socially inept weirdo. And I said, well, I guess he's upstairs. I mean, it's tricky because it's a trailer, but my dad built a garage and a basement, and you're thinking, really, he did that much work on a mobile home? That's a question somebody should have asked that nobody ever asked him. So I'm like, well, there's stairs, and then you kind of in the porch, and then you come up, and then he says, how many stairs? I don't have the blueprints. I did not know that was the prep to call the funeral guy. I said, I don't know, 10? And so we go back and forth, and then he says, so do you have anyone to help me there? Is that a thing? Maybe that's a thing. I didn't know that was a thing. I'm looking at my 4 strapping brothers all over 6 foot, and I say, no, nobody's here. Because that guy's going to have to figure it out. He has not treated me well. So he comes. It works out, I mean, we eventually get him to the other thing was I was hedging because I didn't want to tell him it was a trailer because I wasn't sure. I wanted him to show up in a nice vehicle. And you never know. Is he going to grab an old Toyota 77 pickup when he finds out it's a trailer? I don't know. So I don't want to come around and say, hey, it's a trailer. I don't know what's going to happen. So he comes, he gets the body. Things go okay. Here's the thing. If you're ever in Prince Rupert, British Columbia, and you need funeral services, I would not recommend Ferguson's Funeral Home. And I gave him feedback on Yelp 2 years later. I gave him a 1-star review because I'm a woman who can speak her mind 24 months after something happens. And all through this, oh, thank you, I'm almost done. But all through this, we've got Daniel holding my mother's hand, being an amazing male nurse, or just a nurse. And after the funeral, I found my dad's journal, and I was reading it. And I wasn't actually sure if that's okay, so I Googled it before I came here because I didn't want to tell you guys in case it wasn't. I Googled, is it okay to read your dead dad's journal? 50-50. Google wasn't sure. The jury's out on that one. It ranged anywhere from like you're an asshole to like you're a very compassionate, curious daughter. The responses had a range, So I'm reading through his journal, and one of the first entries was, so I gave him the journal, right? And one of the first entries was, Tracy gave me this journal and told me that when I'm feeling bad, maybe I could write it down and it would make me feel better. And then he said, but actually it makes me feel a lot worse. And I made a small mental note, next time I'm around a dying person, I will keep my journaling advice to myself. I was 28, I knew nothing. I don't know anything. Why was he even listening to me? I don't even know if there's science behind that. I don't know if you're supposed to write it down. So then I find the last entry of the journal. And it says, so he had been in the hospital for a few weeks before he came home. And he said that he wanted to let the nurses know at the hospital. He said, the nurses who have taken care of me here are no less than angels on this earth. And so cheers to the nurses that you all work with, and thank you very much.